They say you can learn everything you need to know about a person by how they treat someone who can't offer them anything in return. I never thought much about that line until the morning she walked into the cafe. My name's Rachel Alden. I'm 29 years old, and I've worked the morning shift at the Maple and Main Cafe in Springfield, Missouri for the last 4 years. It's not glamorous. My shift starts at 4:45 a.m. sharp. That means I'm unlocking the side door in the dark, still shaking sleep from my limbs, prepping muffins, scrubbing coffee pots, and tying my apron before the welders and school bus drivers roll in by 6. The pay's not great. Tips even worse. And Mason, the owner? He's got all the warmth of an unplugged toaster, always grumbling about the cost of butter or how many napkins the high school crowd uses. Still, I stay. Because of the people. There's Joe and Brenda, who split the same breakfast sandwich every Tuesday and have done so since 1992. There's Miss Thompson, a retired teacher who grades crossword puzzles like their final exams. And there's Clay, the city worker who never forgets my birthday and always leaves a folded dollar tip with a note for the girl who remembers how I take my eggs. It's the quiet consistency of it all that keeps me going. I think some people would call it a rut. I call it home. But on the third Monday of October, something shifted. It was a cold morning, real cold, the kind that clings to your bones. The leaves hadn't just turned. They were falling like confetti. I just poured a pot of dark roast when the cafe bell chimed at exactly 6:59 a.m. And that's when I saw her. She couldn't have been older than 10. Wearing this faded orange hoodie with sleeves too short and clutching a frayed canvas backpack like it was armor. Her hair was tied in a crooked ponytail, and her sneakers had holes where toes peeked out. No parent. No bus stop crew. Just her. She walked in without a sound and made a beeline for the corner booth, table 12. The one near the radiator, hidden from the entrance. I watched her sink into the seat, shoulders up around her ears like she was trying to disappear. I grabbed a menu and made my way over. "Morning, sweetheart," I said softly. "You hungry?" She nodded, almost imperceptibly. When she finally spoke, her voice was a breath of wind. "Egg sandwich, please." That first morning, she came up about $1.50 short. She had coins and crumpled bills, quarters, dimes, one lonely dollar. I looked at her trembling hands, those big brown eyes avoiding mine, and I didn't hesitate. "Lucky you," I said, smiling. "Student discount day." I paid the difference myself. Slid a warm glass of milk across the table with her sandwich. "Growing kids need their calcium," I joked. She didn't smile. Didn't look at me. Just ate fast, like someone used to meals being taken away. That might have been the end of it. Just one cold morning and a quiet act of kindness. But she came back. Every day for 2 weeks straight. Always at 7 on the dot. Always in that orange hoodie. Always silent, polite, precise. No smile. No eye contact. No change in routine. I never asked questions. I just made sure the sandwich was warm and the milk fresh. Then came the 15th morning. I just dropped her plate when Mason showed up, nostrils flaring like a bull who caught a whiff of unpaid tabs. "You givin' out free food again?" he barked, loud enough to turn heads. I froze, hands clenched around the tray. "She pays most of it," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just cover the rest." He glanced toward the girl, who had gone rigid in the booth. "She's not a paying customer," he snapped. "You want to play savior, do it somewhere else. No more freebies, or it comes out of your check." I swallowed hard. Couldn't look at her. Just nodded and went back behind the counter. The next morning, there was a new sign taped above the time clock. "Notice, no unaccompanied minors without full payment. Staff providing discounts will be subject to wage reductions." Everyone saw it. Danny, the other waitress, even took a picture and sent it in the staff group chat with a laughing emoji. Captioned it, "Rachel's charity case." Only Martin, our 60-something cook, said anything kind. "You've got heart, kid," he muttered, flipping hash browns with one hand. "Just don't let it get you fired." I nodded, but my heart wasn't in it. I spent the rest of the shift staring out the window, wondering if she'd still come tomorrow, wondering what I'd do if she did. And she did. Same time, same hoodie, same booth. But that morning, I made a decision. If Mason wanted full payment, then I'd pay it. Out of my own wallet. Keep the register clean. No flags. No questions. Just between me and the girl. She'd never know. Because some kids need more than food. They need to be seen. That's how the story really started. Not with a sandwich. Not even with the milk. But with a decision to see someone no one else would. To be continued. That Friday morning, I was already at the register when the girl in the orange hoodie walked in. I'd beaten the sunrise, prepped her sandwich early, paid in advance so the drawer would reflect a clean sale. No room for Mason's wrath today. She took her usual booth, table 12. Still avoided eye contact. Still quiet as a snowfall. I brought her the sandwich and milk and gave her a small smile. Here you go, kiddo. Fresh off the grill. She nodded once, barely. I lingered for half a second longer than usual, hoping for something, anything, but got nothing. That's the thing about silent kids. They don't owe you a performance. You show up anyway. The cafe filled like it always did, steel-toed boots stomping in, teachers chatting over oatmeal, the usual banter floating in the air like steam from a coffee mug. But my mind wasn't in it. I kept glancing at the corner. By the time I made my way back to clean her table, she was gone. Nothing unusual there. She always left without a word. What was different that morning was the piece of paper folded neatly under her milk glass. I spotted it as I wiped the table, creased and soft from being folded and unfolded who knows how many times. I looked around. No one watching. I picked it up. In a shaky, oversized script. You're the only one who talks to me like I'm not scary. I like the milk. Thank you. B. Something caught in my throat. My fingers curled around the note like it was a secret treasure. That one scrap of paper said more than 2 weeks of breakfast orders ever could. She wasn't just quiet. She wasn't just hungry. She was scared. Of what? I didn't know. But I knew fear when I saw it. I'd felt it, 2 years ago, after my mom died. I'd had a whole world of people who looked away instead of looking in. This girl? She wasn't just trying to eat. She was surviving something. I slipped the note into my apron pocket and pressed it flat over my heart, close to where it hurt. That afternoon, while I was restocking creamer behind the counter, Mason came stomping in from his office. Rachel, he barked. What are you doing with the security footage? I blinked. Nothing. Just checking if someone left a phone. Thought I saw something weird earlier. He grunted. That's not your job. Stick to coffee and toast. I nodded and shut the screen, but the truth was I'd been trying to see if someone picked the girl up. If there was anyone out there waiting for her. But the footage showed the same thing every day, her small figure walking alone down the block, glancing behind her every few steps like someone being followed. No car. No guardian. No one waving goodbye. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I tossed and turned in my twin bed, the note tucked in my nightstand. Questions buzzed like flies. Where did she go after breakfast? Was someone supposed to be looking out for her? Did someone used to and then stopped? And more than anything, how long had she been invisible? The next morning, I was up before the alarm. Made 2 sandwiches, one for her, one just in case. Paid for both. Made sure the milk was hot, not warm. But 7 o'clock came and went. No orange hoodie. By 7:20, I was staring out the fogged-up window, coffee going cold in my hand. By 8 o'clock, I'd walked outside twice under the excuse of tossing trash, just to look down the street. Still no sign. Everything all right? Martin asked as he cracked a dozen eggs into the skillet. I nodded, but my heart was sinking like a stone. Had she gotten sick? Had Mason's tantrum spooked her? Or had something worse happened? At 8:15, just when I'd convinced myself she wasn't coming, the world around us went still. A black SUV rolled into the parking lot, windows so dark you couldn't see who was inside. It parked directly out front. Not in a spot. Just stopped. The chatter in the cafe stuttered. Conversations paused. Forks hovered mid-bite. 2 men in charcoal suits stepped out first, scanning the area like Secret Service agents. Then they opened the back door. A man stepped out. Tall, mid-40s, crisp black coat, face clean-shaven and unreadable. You ever see someone who just looks important? Not flashy, not loud, but like the room is always waiting for them to speak? That was this guy. He walked inside like he owned gravity. Mason scrambled out from behind the office, smoothing his shirt. Good morning, sir. Welcome to Mapleland, Maine. Can I help you? The man didn't even glance at him, just swept the room with his gaze until his eyes landed on me. Then he said, in a deep, measured voice that sliced through the silence, I'm looking for the person who's been helping my daughter. I froze. He took a step forward. The men behind him adjusted slightly, like they were ready for anything. The whole cafe stared. I set the coffee pot down, suddenly aware of how fast my heart was racing. I think that's me, I said quietly. The man turned to face me fully. His eyes softened just a fraction. Her name's Eliza. 10 years old. Orange hoodie. Always sits in the back. I nodded, throat tightening. She hasn't spoken to anyone outside our family since her mother passed, he said. Until 2 days ago, when she gave her tutor a note. About a waitress. About milk. About feeling safe. He reached into his coat and unfolded a piece of paper. I recognized the writing instantly. You're the only one who talks to me like I'm not scary. I had to find you, he said. Because that note, that was the first sentence she's written for someone other than a therapist in over 3 years. And just like that, everything shifted. Eliza wasn't just some kid who came in alone. She was a story trying to be told. And I had been the first person to listen. I don't know how long I stood there, frozen behind the counter with a drip of coffee sliding slowly down the side of the glass pot. The man in the suit, Eliza's father, was still holding the note in his hand like it was something sacred. I'm Daniel Whitaker, he said, his voice steady, but it carried something beneath it. Weariness, maybe. Or worry stretched too thin. I believe you've been helping my daughter. Without knowing what you were doing, you reached her when no one else could. The cafe was dead quiet. Even Martin stopped flipping pancakes. Behind Daniel, his security detail stayed motionless but alert, as if someone might suddenly leap up and toss a plate. Mason finally cleared his throat. Well, of course, we pride ourselves on customer service. Miss Alden is a valued employee. In fact, I personally instructed her to keep a close eye on the girl. That did it. Daniel turned his head slowly and stared at Mason the way a parent stares at someone who just took credit for their child's drawing. You did? He asked coolly. Absolutely. We always try to support the community, especially children. Funny thing about lies, they sound loudest when the truth is sitting quietly next to them. Daniel didn't say anything, just nodded once, almost imperceptibly, then turned back to me. I'm not here to cause a scene, he said. I just needed to meet the person who made my daughter feel human again. I couldn't think of a single thing to say. Not you're welcome. Not I didn't do anything special. Not even she's a wonderful kid, though all of them were true. I just nodded. Then I asked the only thing I could manage. Is she okay? He exhaled through his nose. She's home today. Caught a cold. Nothing serious. But she cried when she realized she wouldn't be able to come here this morning. His voice dropped a little. She was afraid you'd think she stopped coming because she didn't like the milk anymore. That one broke something in me. I grabbed the counter to keep myself from tipping over. Daniel reached into his coat again and handed me a card. Simple white, heavy paper, my name already written across the top in clean, block letters. If you're interested, he said, I'd like to help you open your own place. Somewhere better than this. Mason's face turned the color of sour cream. Wait, hold on, Mr. Whitaker. I'm sure we can work something out. Daniel raised one hand, and Mason stopped talking mid-sentence like someone had hit a mute button. I don't make offers twice, Daniel said. Then to me, you showed kindness to my daughter when she had no reason to expect it. No agenda. No angle. Just kindness. That matters more than most people realize. I took the card with hands that trembled more than I'd admit. I don't understand, I whispered. I just gave her a sandwich. Daniel smiled, faint but real. You gave her a reason to come back. At that moment, the cafe bell chimed again. Every head turned as the door creaked open. And there she was, Eliza. Orange hoodie zipped to her chin, holding the hand of a tall woman I assumed was her caretaker or maybe a tutor. The woman murmured something to her, then gently let go. Eliza stepped forward alone. She didn't look scared. She didn't look invisible. She looked like a kid trying very hard to be brave. When she reached me, she didn't say anything right away. She just reached into her backpack and pulled out a crumpled napkin. This one had a sketch on it. A tiny drawing of a milk glass with a smiley face and stick figure beside it labeled R. Then, she looked up. For the first time in 3 weeks, she looked me right in the eye. Will you still have egg sandwiches? She asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it was clear. Sure. I dropped to my knees and hugged her. Every eye in the cafe was still on us, but I didn't care. Every day, I told her. As long as you want them. She didn't hug back right away. But after a second, I felt her arms tighten around me, just a little. When we stood again, she turned toward her dad. He gave a small nod, and she smiled, just a flicker, but enough. Enough to know something inside her was changing. The bell above the door rang again as they left, and I stood there like a ghost, card still in hand, napkin still clenched in my fingers. Later that afternoon, when the lunch rush had died and the diner felt too quiet, I sat on the back step by the dumpsters and read the card again. Daniel Whitaker, founder and CEO of Whitaker Capital, investment magnate, worth more than I'd ever dream of having. And here he was, offering to bankroll a stranger's dream because of a sandwich and a glass of milk. I didn't sleep much that night because I knew my answer. It took me 4 days to work up the nerve to call the number on Daniel's card. For days of staring at it on my nightstand, of folding and unfolding the paper napkin Eliza had drawn on. For days of Mason throwing extra side eyes my way, like he knew the winds had changed but couldn't figure out which direction they were blowing. On the 5th morning, I woke up before my alarm, sat in my tiny kitchen, and dialed the number before I could chicken out. A woman answered. Smooth voice, all business. Whitaker Capital. This is Marlene. I froze. I was told to call this number. My name's Rachel Alden. Mr. Whitaker gave me his card. There was the sound of keys clicking, then a pause. You're the cafe employee, correct? From Maple and Maine? Yeah, that's me. One moment. The line went silent for a heartbeat. Then Daniel's voice came through, warm but efficient. Ms. Alden, I was hoping you'd call. We met that Thursday in a sunlit office on the 6th floor of a building that smelled like money. Not literally, but you know the kind: leather furniture, filtered water dispensers, floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook parts of town you never see from a bus stop. I felt like a second-hand coat in a designer boutique. Daniel didn't waste time. You've been serving everyone else's dream for years. I'd like to help you build your own. He slid a folder across the desk. Inside? Business plans, zoning permits, lease opportunities, even a mock logo, drawn in soft script across the top of a page. E&L Mornings. Eliza came up with the name, he said, smiling faintly. She says you're the only person who made her mornings feel like mornings again. I stared at the logo for a long time, fingers tracing the curves of the letters. Daniel, I said slowly, I'm a waitress. I've never even run a hot dog cart. He leaned back in his chair. And I'm not a chef, but I fund restaurant groups. I've got people who will walk you through every step of this. Legal, financial, design. All you have to do is decide if you want it. I looked up at him, unsure how to even begin processing what he was offering. He held my gaze. I'm not giving this to you out of pity, he said. This isn't charity. This is an investment. In kindness. In what it can do. And in the people who still believe it matters. So I said yes. And 3 months later, on a chilly morning in January, E&L Mornings opened its doors. 6 blocks from the old diner. It wasn't fancy, just warm. Amber light from pendant bulbs, soft music playing low, shelves lined with old storybooks and puzzles. A corner booth shaped like a school bus. A bin filled with donated gloves and hats. And a sign hanging proudly by the register. No child turned away. All students welcome. We did something called a suspended meal board. Customers could buy an extra sandwich or drink for someone who couldn't afford it. Post-it notes stuck to a corkboard served as tokens. Kids would grab one on the way in. Some even started leaving notes in return. On the first day, I was terrified no one would show. But they came. Joe and Brenda came, still splitting their sandwich but now beaming with pride. Miss Thompson brought crossword puzzles for the kids. Clay dropped off a tin of homemade peppermints for good luck. And then, just after 7 a.m., Eliza walked in. Same orange hoodie, though it had been patched up with a smiley face patch on the elbow. She wore a tiny black apron with the cafe logo stitched on the front. She didn't say much. She didn't need to. She helped fold napkins and write the chalkboard specials. She drew a new picture each week to pin behind the counter. One time, she asked if she could help me make the milk. I showed her how to warm it gently, not too hot, and she whispered, I like the way it smells when it's just right. And she was right. It did have a smell, comfort, and memory, and something that felt like home. Sometimes Daniel would stop by, always quiet. He'd sit at the corner table with his laptop open, sipping black coffee. Occasionally, he'd slip me a folded envelope labeled for supplies or hire someone good. Always with a note inside that said simply, thank you. One afternoon, Mason emailed me. Subject, congratulations. Let's talk. He offered me my old job back. A raise. Even said we could collaborate. I didn't respond. Martin, our old line cook, joined us 3 weeks after opening. Said he was tired of frozen hash browns and wanted to cook for people who weren't dead inside. He brought his famous recipe. Customers started asking for Martin's crispy magic. By the end of the first month, we'd made enough to break even. By the second, we had to hire a second cashier. One morning, Eliza handed me a brown paper package. Inside was a framed photo. Her, standing at the counter, holding an egg sandwich. In her blocky handwriting underneath it read, thank you for the milk when I was thirsty, and the kindness when I was hungry. B. I hung it right behind the counter, where I could see it every day, where no one could miss it, where every customer would know what this place was really about. By March, E&L mornings had settled into a rhythm, like a song with a familiar verse. I could wake up and almost hear the beat of the griddle, the hum of the milk steamer, the creak of the front door just before 7. Some days, it felt like I'd been doing this my whole life. Other days, I still felt like a kid playing pretend in someone else's dream. But Eliza was blooming. Not loudly, not all at once. She unfurled like a leaf after frost, delicate, cautious, and unstoppable once the sun hit just right. At first, she'd only whisper to me. Soft things like, "You're out of napkins in the yellow bin," or "the chalk squeaks if you write too fast." She never shouted, never interrupted. She moved with a kind of grace kids don't often carry, like she knew the space she took up had once been questioned. But then, something beautiful started happening. She began nodding to regulars. Started offering cookies to the toddlers who came in holding their parents' hands. And once, just once, she giggled. I told Martin he couldn't use a burned edge waffle as a special, and he raised both hands and said, "Come on, Ratch, it's not burnt, it's just toasted enthusiasm." She laughed, covered her mouth quickly like she wasn't sure she was allowed. But she laughed. That night, I cried into my mug of tea, smiling so hard it hurt. Because when a quiet child laughs, it's not just sound. It's proof. Proof something's healing. The cafe had become more than a breakfast joint. We had moms doing homework with their kids in the booths, grandparents reading aloud to toddlers, teens sketching in journals. One college student came in every Thursday and left a $10 bill labeled for the next hungry soul. We kept growing. Local papers started sniffing around. A reporter from the Springfield Post stopped by asking questions with a voice like velvet and a notepad filled with scribbles. I let him ask. Let him take his photos. But when he got to Daniel's part, how the cafe got funded, I kept it simple. This place isn't about money, I told him. It's about mornings. Safe ones. Warm ones. The kind that start with being seen. He raised an eyebrow, scribbled that down, and thanked me for my time. A week later, we were in the Sunday feature. And the very next morning, the line wrapped around the corner. Most folks just wanted to try the food. Some came to see if the story was real. But a few, just a few, walked in quietly, holding the hand of a small, anxious child. And those were the ones I noticed most. Because they were like Eliza had been. Scared, unsure, bracing for disappointment. So we welcomed them like family. And soon, those scared little kids were scribbling on napkins, asking for extra syrup, and writing notes that started with "Dear Ratch." One morning, a girl named Lottie came in with a black eye and a grandmother who looked like she hadn't slept in a week. Lottie didn't say a word, just pointed to the picture of Eliza on the wall. "She looks like me," she whispered. I looked over and realized, for the first time, Eliza's smile in that photo wasn't just hers anymore. It belonged to every kid who walked through our doors hoping to be invisible but needing the opposite. Eliza took to Lottie like a big sister, showed her the secret drawer with the crayon box, made her a bravery badge from a glitter sticker and a smiley face stamp. Later, Lottie asked if she could help pour the milk. I looked at Eliza, who nodded seriously. "She's ready," she said. And just like that, we had our second junior helper. Each week, Eliza brought me another photo or sketch to hang on the wall. One of them was of the cafe itself, windows glowing, people smiling, a milk glass in every hand. Above it, in her slightly lopsided handwriting, "Here, I'm not scared." That drawing is still taped to the wall behind the espresso machine. Smudged in places. Faded by time. But it's never coming down. Because that was our mission statement. Right there in 6 words. "Here, I'm not scared." It was a quiet Tuesday when the envelope showed up. No return address, just my name, Rachel Alden, scrawled in block letters. Martin found it on the counter after morning prep. I opened it between making lattes, my fingers dusted with flour. Inside, a single sheet of thick, expensive paper. "Rachel, I haven't written a thank you note in 20 years, so forgive the awkwardness. What you've built here, it's more than I could have hoped for Eliza." She still doesn't say much, but she talks about her place. Not mine. Not yours. Hers. That says it all. Daniel. There was a second line, smaller. "P.S. The zoning application for the space next door has been approved. Let's expand." I blinked twice and sat down hard on the stool behind the register. The space next door had been vacant since before we opened. A dusty shell of a bakery with busted windows and walls that smelled like old cinnamon. I hadn't even dared dream of expansion. But Daniel had. Quietly. Efficiently. Like he was still planting seeds I didn't even know I'd watered. That same afternoon, Eliza came in after school. Hoodie swapped for a cardigan now, her apron already tied. She saw the letter in my hand and cocked her head. "What's that?" I held it out. "It's from your dad. About the space next door." She read it slowly, lips moving just a little, then looked up at me. For the first time ever, she grinned. "Can I paint the windows?" I didn't cry. Not in front of her. But I said yes. Of course I said yes. That weekend, she painted a sunrise across the dusty panes, big, golden strokes of light, with E and L mornings in the center and tiny stick figures beneath it. One had a tray of milk. One had a whisk. She labeled them, me and you. And just like that, the next chapter had already begun. A week after Eliza's sunrise mural dried, I heard the bell chime, looked up, and nearly dropped the coffee pot. It was Mason, the same man who once threatened to dock my wages over a $2 breakfast. He looked uncomfortable in his own skin, standing there like someone visiting a hospital room they never expected to end up in. "Nice place," he said. His eyes scanned the chalkboard specials. "Lot of buzz around town." I just nodded. "Can I get you something?" He cleared his throat. "Actually, I came to apologize." That stopped me cold. "I shouldn't have." He paused, then tried again. "I didn't understand what you were doing. Not until everyone else did." Behind me, Martin muttered from the kitchen, "Take some people longer." Mason caught it, but let it pass. "I saw the article," he said, "and the photo of that little girl with the sandwich. I'm glad you did what you did. And I was wrong." It was more than I ever expected from him. I poured him a coffee. "On the house." He blinked. "Really?" I smiled. "Everyone gets a second chance. Sometimes even third." He sat at a window table, sipping slow. I didn't ask if he was staying long, but when he left, he dropped a 20 into the suspended meal jar. Didn't say a word. Just nodded once and walked out. Eliza started keeping a journal. I didn't know until she left it behind one afternoon, accidentally, I think, tucked between two coloring books under the school corner bench. I spotted it while closing up. It was purple, soft cover, one of those lock with a key kinds, but the clasp was broken. I hesitated. Flipped it open just enough to see her handwriting. First page read, "Things I notice when I'm not scared." That alone nearly knocked the wind out of me. Inside were sketches, scribbled lines, and tiny moments captured like treasures. The sound of milk steaming sounds like breathing when it's safe. Rachel smells like cinnamon and clean laundry. Lottie laughs louder when I pretend to drop the spoon. Sometimes I forget I'm supposed to be scared here. I closed the book and set it aside. Next day, I didn't mention I'd seen it. Just handed it back with a smile. She looked surprised, then embarrassed. Started to stammer an apology. "No need," I said gently. "It's yours." She nodded, and for the first time, slid into her usual booth without looking back at the door. Whatever she'd been afraid of, outside, at home, in her head, didn't seem to follow her anymore. The journal stayed with her after that. Every so often, I'd see her writing quietly between orders, next to her sandwich. I never read it again. I didn't have to. Our one-year anniversary snuck up on us. I hadn't planned much. Just a few balloons, some thank you cards for regulars, and a new free sandwiches for students banner above the counter. Martin made a double batch of his crispy magic, hash browns, and the place was packed before 8 a.m. But around 9:30, the front door opened with that familiar ding, and in walked Eliza, holding a box with a ribbon. She placed it on the counter, cleared her throat softly, and handed me a note. "You made me feel real again. So I made something to remind you why you're here." Inside the box was a hand-painted ceramic tile. Messy, imperfect, beautiful. It showed a sunrise over a tiny café, and two stick figures standing in front of it, one with a ponytail, one with an apron. Labeled again, "Me and You." I hugged her tight. Behind us, customers clapped quietly, as if they all knew exactly what that tile meant. We mounted it on the wall next to the register that afternoon. Still there, still warm, still everything this place was built for. It's morning again, a slow one. Rain tapping soft against the windows. Smells of maple syrup, coffee, and a hint of cinnamon drift from the kitchen. Eliza is at her usual spot, writing quietly in her journal. She's taller now, talks more, laughs easily. Still wears the orange hoodie some days, though now it's more of a cape than a shield. Daniel drops in once a week. Always orders black coffee. Sometimes reads the paper. Sometimes just watches his daughter from a distance with a look only dads get when they're remembering the scared little girl who once wouldn't speak. The suspended meal board is so full these days we've started rotating the notes weekly. One little square of paper says, "To the kid who sits in the corner and thinks nobody sees them, I do. I was you." And people read it. You'd be surprised how many. We've expanded into the space next door. There's a small reading nook now. Local musicians play soft sets on Saturdays. Sometimes, teachers grade papers at booth 5 while kids doodle in chalk on the sidewalk outside. E&L Mornings isn't just a cafe anymore. It's a landing place, a breath, a beginning. Eliza still paints, still writes. Last week, she gave me a fresh napkin drawing. This one taped to the bakery case. A milk glass, a rising sun, and a dozen tiny figures sitting together. She labeled it, "Everyone who stayed." And beneath that, in blocky, uneven letters, "Kindness is what stays when everything else leaves." I think that's what this whole story was always about. Not about milk or sandwiches. Not about funding or fame. Just about someone choosing to care. Quietly. Consistently. And how that care became something permanent. So if you ever find yourself walking down 8th Street in Springfield, and you see the cafe with the sunrise painted on the window, come in. Sit a while. Your coffee's already brewing. And your seat? It's been waiting.